Today we're reviewing the Yeti Arc. Today's video is sponsored by Competitive Cyclist. So I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is that I've been able to take the Yeti out a few times and get to know it, and today we're going to learn about the review and what I think of the bike. The bad news is I accidentally deleted all my footage from that ride review. So I apologize. This is not my normal style where I review it as I'm riding it, but I still have all my review notes and I can't wait to share with you my thoughts about this. Thanks for understanding and being patient. The first thing you notice when you hop on the Yeti Arc is that it feels large. When you're seated and pedaling, the effective top tube, the distance to the bars while seated, feels really long, a lot longer than the geometry numbers would suggest. But when you stand up, it feels just right for a medium with that 445 reach. So I think the seat tube is a little bit slacker than it should be. I'd love to see it 1 to 2 degrees steeper. That'll pull you forward a little bit more. You won't be hunched over reaching for the bars. It won't feel quite so big when you're riding. The next thing you'll notice when you first hop on that bike is how light this thing is. It's extremely light, and that means it gets up and goes. It accelerates so well. Now, it's interesting. I review bikes anywhere from 23 pounds up to 35 pounds, and a 25-pound hardtail with 130 mil travel, 2.6 tires, 12-speed drivetrain, 175 mil dropper, that is pretty special, and it cannot be overstated how good a light hardtail feels. In fact, this Yeti really encaptures what makes a great hardtail great. It's light, it's zippy, it's quick. When you're carving around corners and you see a small little rise coming, instead of slowing down and just getting in an easy gear and spinning, it encourages you to shift to a harder gear and just charge up it. And because it's so light, the bike is very willing to do that. It's also interesting how they've managed to make it feel light without it feeling delicate. Most bikes in this weight class feel delicate, like if you were to tip them over or crash, you'd break them. But the Yeti doesn't. It feels really sturdy. So just judging how the bike feels in your hands and when you look at the frame, I feel confident it's going to be strong. And I don't feel like, on my first crash, I'm going to crack the frame in half. Today's video is sponsored by Competitive Cyclist. As you know, there's a worldwide shortage of bikes right now, but fortunately, Competitive has these Yeti Arcs in stock in a few different builds. I'm going to link them in the description below so that you can get one before they're all sold out. When you purchase through those links, it supports Hardtail Party, so thank you in advance. They've also included a discount code for you guys to use on your first order at Competitive Cyclist. Some exclusions apply. Competitive also sent me some really cool goodies that I want to feature in this video. First up is my favorite chain lube. This is Muck Off's Dry Lube. Chain lube is one of those boring things that you don't really think about until you have a bad one. But when you get a good one, man, is it great. So this is my number one recommended chain lube. I really love this stuff. And it smells like surf wax. It smells really good. Next up is the Timber Bell. Basically, it has 3 positions: off, low, and high. It uses vibrations on your handlebars to ring the little cowbell. So as you hit big bumps, it'll make noise. This is the DT Swiss 54-tooth ratchet upgrade. One of my favorite things about the DT350 that comes on this Yeti Arc is how easy it is to have a faster engaging hub by just swapping these parts out. It doesn't even need any tools. You pull off the cassette, swap these parts on, it even comes with a special grease, put it back together, and now you have way better engagement. And finally, Competitive Cyclist sent me this Rack XL from Feedback Sports. This is a bike rack. You roll your back wheel into it, it's spring-loaded, and it holds your bike up. It's just a really nice solution, and when you don't need it, it folds up flat, and it's real easy to store out of the way. But this is my number one way to store bikes when they're not in use. All right, let's get back to that Yeti Arc. The third thing you'll notice as you start riding this bike is just how good the frame compliance feels. This is a very special carbon bike. It's stiff when you sprint under power, but it's forgiving when you hit bumps and chatter. And because of that, you're able to carry more speed into things and you're less affected by the chatter in the ground. And it really is noticeable. The fourth thing you're going to notice, if you're me, is the head tube angle. It's got a 67-degree head angle. That's super common. A lot of hardtails have that head angle, but I don't think it works very well for the Yeti. It wanted to steer at the bars and not at the feet. I feel like if the reach was 10 mil shorter, it would actually respond better. I don't think bikes ride well when we stretch them longer without making them slacker. I think we need to slacken this bike out some to really make it come alive. And even when I took it on mellow XC-ish trails, it just didn't, something was missing. It didn't quite feel right. But I had enough excitement about the bike that I knew it was capable of so much more with a few tweaks. So I definitely want to get experimental on the Yeti because I think I can unlock greatness in this bike with a slacker head angle. But let's talk a little bit more about that head angle. So it's a 67-degree head angle at static height with nobody on it. When you get on it, it sinks to 30%. You now have a 90 mil fork, or you have 90 mil of travel, of up travel left. So when you're sitting on it at sag, it's at 69 degrees. So when you're unweighted, it's 67, which is great. When you're weighted, 69, and it starts to feel darty and a little bit nervous. So this bike has a bit of an identity crisis. It's got XC brakes. It's got XC weight-ish. I know XC race bikes are way lighter, but it's got that snappy XC feel to it. It's got the 67-degree XC head angle. So in some ways, it has that XC vibe to it. But in other ways, it's got 2.6 minions on the front. That is an aggressive tire and a big one with tons of traction. And it's a heavy tire, which is real amazing they were able to fit that tire on there and still keep the weight down. But those big 29 by 2.6 tires encourage you to carry more speed into things because the traction was there. It's got a long modern reach, so you're nice and comfortable when you're riding it, and the bars are out there and you can move around a lot and it feels real comfortable there. It's also got that 175 mil dropper, so you can slam that seat out of the way and kind of rally it like a BMX bike. So I feel like it's always fighting between the rowdy trail / enduro bike that part of the parts want to be and the XC part that the other parts want to be. The head angle was the biggest limitation. So you just get going in a straight line, go through chunk, and you're doing pretty well with those nice wide bars, the long reach, the grippy tires. And then you'd come to a corner and it's like, oh no. When it's time to corner, the XC mode kicks in and you're trying to corner at rowdy all mountain trail enduro speeds on an XC-ish bike, and it just didn't quite work for me. The front end wanted to plow, and so it had this split personality, and I couldn't decide if it wanted to be more cross-country or if it wanted to be more enduro. And it sounds like the way Yeti built it, they wanted to kind of skirt that fine line and make it a bike you could ride for 60 miles but also party on. But I think it needs a little bit of a tweak to be right. It doesn't quite feel right yet. That head angle especially is holding it back. I'm trying to be brutally honest here and share with you the nuances that I felt while riding this bike. A lot of people will review these and just say, oh yeah, it's great, it does all this great stuff, and it doesn't really tell you anything. So I'm trying to give you the nitty-gritty. What I haven't said yet is that this is a really good bike. I don't like the way it corners with that steeper head angle, and it feels nervous on bigger terrain with that long reach. So I just think the long reach, steep head angle don't really play super well together, but it was good enough that I think there's an incredible bike hiding inside if we just tweak it a little bit and make the head angle slacker. I was talking to the guys at Yeti and I said, can someone run like a 150 mil fork on this? Will that void the warranty? And they said, go ahead. It won't void the warranty. Some people are going to want to do that. Now, personally, I don't think that's the way to make this bike come alive, but you know, you might want to do that. The problem with over forking this bike is it's going to lift the front end 20 mil. It's going to lift the bottom bracket, which will make it corner worse. And it's going to slacken the seat tube angle as well, which it's already slacker than I want. So it's just going to chopper it out a bit. And I think that's going to take away from some of the greatness that's hiding inside of this bike. I think the right way to open this bike up is to run 9.8 slacker headset slacker system in the frame. I think that's really going to make this bike come alive, but we'll see. I may make it worse, but we're definitely going to experiment with that to see if we can unlock some of that rowdy potential that's hidden inside of this frame. Also, the bike doesn't seem to have much of a personality. It's a blank canvas. It does a lot of things well, but it's missing a little bit of excitement. That I call it special sauce, where it's just that extra little something that just makes you smile a little bit bigger and come alive when you're riding it. Don't get me wrong, it's a really great bike. It does a lot of things really well, but it's just a little bit vanilla. So we're going to get experimental with this and see if we can help this bike settle on its personality to see if it wants to be XC or if it wants to get rowdy on the trail and, carry the speeds that the tires want to carry it. And real briefly, I'd like to talk about the things that bug me in the first look, like it's a press fit bottom bracket. I think it's weird that the cables are internal, then external, then internal again. But none of that matters when you're riding the bike because you're just riding the bike and all of that erases and it doesn't matter. Most people are not going to be swapping parts on and off this bike like I do with a lot of my experimental steel builds. They're going to buy it as a complete and leave it. And when their bottom bracket gets creaky, they're going to take it to the shop and the shop's going to press it in. And when you're riding the bike, you don't think, oh no, this is press fit bottom bracket. I can really tell when I ride. You don't. It's just one of those small things that's not a deal breaker at all. So on paper, yes, I'd rather have a threaded bottom bracket. But in the real world, it's not a big deal and it doesn't detract from the performance of the bike. Another thing, this bike is beautiful and you just feel a little bit of Yeti pride when you're riding it. You are just so thrilled to be on that thing. And it's special. It's got beautiful lines, beautiful paint job, beautiful subdued graphics. It is a beautiful bike. Now the bike spec on this bike is phenomenal. The only spec I would want to update are the brakes. I'm okay with 2-pot brakes, but I would want bigger rotors on it because those tires just beg you to go faster and faster and faster. And the rotors felt a little bit undersized. Other than that, there's not a single component I would want to upgrade. It's nicer than any of my personal bikes. That X01 shifting, that's the best of the best for me. It just shifts so crisp and instant. And yes, it shifts under load great. It just erased. And you didn't have to think about shifting, you just rode. And this bike kind of disappears under you except for that hunched over feeling with the slacker seat tube and the steeper head angle. But when you're in the zone, this bike, it kind of erased all the things happening with the bike and you were just in the zone with the trail. And that's why I think a little tweak with that head angle will just create an incredible bike. All right, let's sum it up. This bike is super high quality. It feels so great when you ride it. The ride feel is fantastic. It's just how I'd want a carbon frame to ride. It doesn't feel delicate. There's no rattling of cables in there. It's just a silent, quiet ride. And that weight really comes into play. It just wakes the bike up. And you just feel like a skier on a powder day where no one else is on the mountain. It's just you and the mountain and you've got perfect conditions. That lightweight really makes the bike dance. And it reminds you, oh yeah, this is how hardtails are supposed to ride. They're supposed to be fun on flatter corners. And they're supposed to be fun on short little uphills. And they're supposed to be great in the flow. And this bike teased me. It gave me just enough to see what it's capable of, but it wouldn't quite be what I needed it to be. It's got that split personality. It's stuck between XC mode and trail, aggressive all mountain enduro mode. And it's kind of good at both, but not great at either. There's an amazing bike lurking in there that's just dying to come out and it's not quite out yet. We just need to tweak a couple things. I can totally see why Yeti fans are Yeti fans for life, many of them. And once they buy a Yeti, they just keep buying Yetis. It's a beautiful bike and you bond with it when you ride it. That said, I do feel like it's missing a little bit of personality. It's missing a little bit of excitement, a little bit of that special sauce. And we're going to see if we can unlock it. And as always, these are my impressions. This is not the gospel truth that everyone's going to feel the same things I feel when you ride a bike. I always encourage people to go out and ride it for themselves. But in these crazy times, especially in a bike shortage, I realize that's not a possibility for a lot of people. So I'm real appreciative to companies like Yeti who send me these bikes short-term basis to review them and share my thoughts with you guys about them. If you're looking for a hardtail and you want to compare hardtail A to hardtail B, or you're not sure what to buy, or you're lost in this process, I consult with people one-on-one and help them pick the perfect hardtail or full suspension for their budget, for the area where they ride, their level of expertise riding, etc. It's a back and forth communication process and it takes quite a bit of time. And because of that, I charge for this service. If you're interested in that, head over to patreon.com/hardtailparty where you can sign up for the consultation tier and we can work together to help you find your perfect bike. If you don't need that, keep watching my free reviews and learning from them. I make them for free to help people learn what a bike feels like when they can't ride it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this channel, subscribe, give this video a thumbs up. There's a party in the mountains and you're invited.